Before I call the member for Dunstan, I remind the House that this is the member's first speech and that she should be accorded the normal courtesies and respect accorded to new members on this important occasion. Standing Order number 113A provides that any member making a first speech has 1 hour. All other members in address and reply have 30 minutes. These courtesies are no objections, no points of order, the rules of relevance and the use of other members' names are relaxed. The member for Dunstan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In this place, each of us is afforded the opportunity to tell our story. Mine is perhaps an unusual one, and I feel fortunate to have the opportunity to introduce myself to members, to my community and to the broader South Australian community in this way in my first contribution to this place. As a courtesy, my story does allude to domestic and family violence and substance abuse, which I wanted to let people know in case they find these topics difficult to listen to. In touching on these topics, I'm mindful of the protests which occurred on the steps of Parliament House on Saturday. I stand in solidarity with the people who gathered on the steps of Parliament, including the member for Raynell and the member for Gibson. And I say, while I don't choose this speech to tell the deeper story of a childhood scarred by violence, that time may come, and in the meantime, I simply say, violence against women and children is a national crisis. It has been a crisis for years, for decades, for generations. I would also like to acknowledge that I stand in this place on the lands of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. In sharing my story, I do not seek to elicit any sympathy. I wish to convey the facts of my life so that my community of Dunstan understand what has made me the person I am today, resilient, determined, and possessed of a deep understanding of the precious value of community. I was born in Sydney in 1972. My mother was 18 years old when I was born, and her parents were living in France. My father's parents lived in Melbourne. My mum was barely out of childhood herself, and my father had started to display behaviour that would later upend our lives. After I was born, my father, only 21 himself, struggled to adjust to the responsibilities of fatherhood, and my grandparents in France sent for my mum to provide her safe haven from my father's increasingly erratic behaviour. I arrived in France as a 4-month-old baby with my mum and would live there and in London for the next 3 years. My father joined us after about 6 months, and by all accounts it was a period of relative calm. At the same time, my paternal grandparents had also moved to Europe, and I spent time with them as well in Greece, Italy and Spain, in which time I was imbued with a lasting sense of Mediterranean culture, one that I recognise in the beautiful multicultural communities I live amongst today. After I turned 3, we returned to Australia, and my sister was born soon after. I remember loving being her big sister from the moment she was born and loving pushing her pram. Over the next 2 years, we moved so frequently from house to house and suburb to suburb that I had no real sense of place. My father was very bright, and after being accelerated twice through high school, had graduated from year 12 at the age of 14. Too young and probably too ill-disciplined to consider university, he became a bricklayer and something of a knockabout, and very much a man of the 1970s. Something like a mix between the Solo Man and Paul Hogan. The Solo Man being the rugged moustache man in 80s Solo soft drink ads, kayaking thrillingly through the rapids. Only my dad's thrills and spills involved racing Ducatis and arriving home late at night and deciding we were all driving to Melbourne right now to visit his brothers and parents, even if he had been at the pub since knockoff. My dad had an exacting expectation that didn't allow dissent or failure. Occasionally, though, my dad had a tender side, and throughout his life he would read Henry Lawson and Banjo Paterson poetry and short stories to my sister and I, with such fervour that he would sometimes be brought to tears. Reading The Drover's Dog was sure to have this effect. He also wrote beautifully himself. The blessing in my life at this time was the fact my grandparents lived in a great big house just around the corner, and I had the freedom to come and go as I pleased. My grandparents were the artists David and Hermia Boyd, and my grandfather, whose main focus was his painting, worked studiously 6 days a week. My grandmother was loving and an excellent cook, and I often sat with her on the lounge shelling peas or peeling potatoes while we watched TV. They had a swimming pool, a piano, a potting wheel, my grandfather's paints, and a ton of books, all of which I made the most of. My parents continued to move frequently from Sydney to Newcastle and back again, and by the time I had finished my primary years, I had been to 6 primary schools. While I felt a strong sense of identity within my family, my lack of a real sense of home persisted. When I was 12, my husband moved us to 100 acres of steep and rugged bush in the Hunter Valley. It was a huge culture shock. After spending most of my childhood up until then in relatively normal houses, we moved to a steep bush block with no electricity, no phone and no house. We lived for the first year in a shed with no walls and slept in an army tent. We had kerosene lamps for lights, a kerosene fridge, and my mum cooked on kerosene stoves. When the lamps were blown out, if there was no moon, it was pitch black. The idea was that my dad would build our house, but his work kept him in Sydney for weeks at a time, so progress was slow. In the meantime, my mum and sister and I were living in a kind of permanent camping arrangement out in the Australian bush. One day, my dad came home with a horse, an ex-race horse called Champ. I was thrilled, but still being fairly inexperienced as a rider, I was also pretty apprehensive. I remember my first day riding him like it was yesterday. Dad put me on Champ, and I rode up the driveway, which was about 100 metres. But as soon as I turned him around to come back, Champ put in an almighty pig root and bucked me off. I landed on my stomach and thought I'd broken every bone in my body. I was so winded, I couldn't lift my head off the ground. But Dad rushed up to me and said, "Get up, get back on, show that horse who's boss." So I got back on, and with my dad on his horse, he took me out to some steep country only accessible by fire trails. We rode in through a gully, got to the bottom of a steep hill, and Dad just took off on his horse, headed straight for the top. So Champ took off right behind him. I held on to the front of the saddle for dear life, screaming for my dad to stop. But Dad was ahead, and all I could hear was the sound of horses' hooves thundering up the hill. The hill seemed to go on forever, and bouncing from side to side, I managed to lose both my stirrups. But to my surprise, I stayed on and somehow actually started to like it. And horses became my sanctuary. Soon I wanted to go to Pony Club. My dad said, "Sure, you can go if you can get there yourself." So my sister and I found a way across the mountains and rode together the 8 kilometres to Pony Club, jumping every fallen log in sight, spent the full day riding, and then we rode home the 8 kilometres in the evening, sometimes arriving home after dark. From Pony Club to shows and then eventing, horse riding took up every bit of spare time and energy. It also gave me my first business opportunity. By the time I was 14, I had started a business taking on other people's horses to train and show, earning myself some decent money in the process. My dad became increasingly erratic and, with his mental health deteriorating, began self-medicating with a variety of non-prescription substances. By the time I had started year 10, my dad had been running further off the rails. Later that year, after my school swimming carnival, I caught the train home. My mum and my uncle were waiting to pick me up from the station. As soon as I saw them, I could tell something was terribly wrong. I got in the back of the car, my mum got in beside me and told me that my dad had died earlier that day. He was 37 years old. The experience of knowing and losing this complex and contradictory man, my father, has made me more aware than I otherwise might have been of the importance of mental health as an area of public policy. It is a complex area, and its challenges are not restricted to our state or our nation. It is a global issue. But I know that untreated, mental health can create a raft of other social problems in families and communities. I now understand that my father was also very likely neurodivergent. Sadly, throughout his childhood, he was treated like a naughty little boy, and I'm sure that was formative to the person he became. Had he the opportunity in life for a diagnosis and for early intervention, I think both his life and mine may have been a lot different. I am so intensely proud that the Malinaskus Labor government created a world-first Assistant Minister for Autism, and of the incredible work Assistant Minister Emily Burke is doing in this critical area of policy and of the human experience. What my lived experience has done for me is to make me look beyond the surface to what lies beneath. I look to resolve issues by addressing their causes, whether it's across systems, amongst community, or within an individual's life. There is no point in focusing on surface problems without addressing the underlying causes. I've brought this understanding to all of my work, and I will continue to do so as the member for Dunstan. Would you believe, Mr. Speaker, that my first career was initially with horses and then in the business of cattle sales and breeding? After I finished Year 10, I moved to Western New South Wales to further my own training as a horse rider, and where I continued schooling horses and working as a riding instructor. My first husband was a young man from a big farming family who I'd known for several years. By the age of 19, I had moved with him to his large and isolated family farm, where I continued schooling horses and began working cattle. I loved and threw myself into farming life. My father-in-law, a successful businessman and beef and cereal crop farmer, took me under his wing and taught me the business of cattle sales and breeding. By the time I was 21, I was in charge of cattle sales and purchases and talking bull dust with other farmers at the sale yards. It was a steep learning curve, but I held my own. It taught me I had a head for numbers and good negotiating skills. By the age of 22, I had my first baby. In time, my then husband and I bought a small farm for ourselves. It was covered in a barley crop, and we planned to use the proceeds of that crop to continue farming and, of course, meet our loan repayments. Within weeks of delivering our barley to the New South Wales Grains Board, however, it collapsed, owing millions of dollars. We ended up getting about 20 cents in the dollar back, and the future suddenly looked more challenging than we could have anticipated. We overcame that challenge only to be hit by another. The long on, off and on again millennium drought hit the farming community hard, and we were no exception. I'd had my second baby, a son we called Noah, genuinely in the hope it might break the drought. It worked, and the drought broke with an almighty flood. But after the flood, we went straight back into drought, and that was the finish of us. My husband and I left the farm somewhat broken-hearted and separated. I moved back to Sydney to my grandparents to regroup and reflect. I had learned a lot about business and about myself in the 11 years I'd been on the farm. I had skill sets both innate and learnt in communication and small business, and I was keen to put them to use. My husband, wanting to establish an arts foundation, put me to work in my second career. As my grandpa aged, we became close, and through our conversations, I was able to understand so clearly the ideas he had painted about for longer than I had been alive. About, in his words, man's inhumanity to man, and the idea that we should judge ourselves as a society by the way we treat the least fortunate amongst us. Apart from the Boyds being a family of artists spanning 5 generations, my grandfather's generation were also part of an important period in Australian art history that included his brother Arthur Boyd, brothers-in-law Sidney Nolan and John Percival, and contemporaries and friends such as Charles Blackman, Robert Dickerson, and the South Australian Geoffrey Smart. They were all insistent that the importance of art was both its beauty and that it illustrated the human condition. In spite of my grandfather and his brother and brothers-in-law's commercial success, it was the importance of the deeply political stories and ideas about human frailty that their work conveyed that to them gave their works their value. And they were deeply political. My grandfather's work, for example, was highly critical of the treatment of Australian Aboriginal people at a time when it created a great deal of controversy to do so. He also criticised the death penalty, still in use in Australia at the time, and how the application of the law ignored potentially contributory factors such as poverty or destitution. This is the value I place on art, and I know it is the value many artists place on their work, whichever form it takes. After several years, while continuing to work for my grandfather, I moved to Newcastle, a smaller, less frenetic city that allowed me the time to focus on my children as they began their secondary education. I also started studying law remotely, a long-held ambition. It was manageable as long as I was able to go to the tutes and exams only held in Sydney. One weekend, I went to a local cafe to sip coffee and read the papers. The papers were laid out on a table, and I stood beside a man selecting a paper to read. There was only one copy of the weekend paper left with all its weekend sections, and the man and I agreed to share it by swapping sections after we'd read them. After several sections of newspaper had been exchanged, the man and I got into an easy conversation, talking about all manner of things, from war to books to motorbikes. After hours of sitting there chatting, we both needed to get going, and as we were leaving, he said to me, "Shall we share the newspaper again?" We swapped names and numbers, and as I walked away, I thought, wow, James, he seems like a lovely guy. And he was, and he is. James and I were married exactly 1 year later, and he brought elements into my life I had rarely experienced before. He was reliable and kind, and quickly became my biggest champion and my rock. I've never admired anyone more. He also made me a defence spouse, something that would change my life and my outlook permanently. The Australian Defence Forces and their families deserve special mention. Serving members who have an understanding of service to country none of us civilians can truly understand, who put their lives on the line in defence of our country and our way of life. And let's be clear, we are not just talking abstract ideas here. We are talking about the defence of democracy, human rights, and free and open trade. Whether it's peacekeeping in Rwanda, protecting the emergence of fledgling democracies like East Timor, or being shot at in open combat in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, our defence personnel demonstrate a love of country in a way few of us see or could truly comprehend. Australian defence families also play a unique role. With husbands, wives and partners away on deployment for 6 to 9 months at a time, you learn to be resilient and self-reliant. But the most profound lesson was the importance of connection with people with shared experiences, and to always be prepared to advocate for the community around you. In 2013, James was posted to 7 RAR here in Adelaide as a rifle company commander. I remember the day we arrived here so well with our preschooler son and 2-week-old baby. It was extremely hot, a typical Adelaide heatwave, and I was wondering what sort of hellhole my husband had just brought me to. An old Adelaide friend suggested we took a drive to a place called Norwood. We took Si to Coke Park, strolled around some streets, and afterwards had lunch at Chibo at Norwood Place, where we sat under the red umbrellas and fell in love. We had been seduced by the beautiful houses, the gracious trees, and the unrivalled shopping strip of the parade, dotted generously with cafes and restaurants in every direction. We knew in that moment that this place was home, the place we wanted to raise our family, the place we would go on to start our businesses. After a lifetime of often having no clear sense of what place was home, I had suddenly arrived in a place I had never heard of before, only to feel like I had come home. James and I had come to Adelaide for what we thought would be a 2-year defence posting, but suddenly and unexpectedly, we knew we had found our forever home. Not a house, but the streets and the suburbs of what I now know as Dunstan and our state. Soon after, we found a house nearby, and Norwood and St Peters and Marden and Kensington and all the suburbs in between became our community. James left full-time service and we built a life here. The place we shop, the place I met with the mums from my mum's group, the place where my family and I have grown and thrived. This community welcomed us unreservedly. Sadly unable to continue with my studies in law due to having young children, a husband in the army who was frequently away, and my course being run exclusively out of Sydney, I decided to focus on alternative dispute resolution, which had interested me greatly when I covered it as part of my law studies. I undertook training and became a mediator, focusing initially on family law mediation. I then expanded into workplace and general dispute resolution with a focus on small and family business, which I had always loved, having worked in small family businesses almost my entire working life. I built a small but successful business that allowed me the flexibility to manage a young family with a husband whose very successful business meant longer hours and frequent interstate and international travel. Having been a member as a young farmer in country New South Wales, in 2018 I joined the Australian Labor Party. I let Eamon Burke know from day one that I wanted to get involved in a policy capacity. Within days, Eamon introduced me to Emily Burke. One afternoon, Emily called me and asked me if I would be interested in running as a candidate in our federal seat of Sturt. I laughed and said, no thanks, I'm not a front of house kind of person, I wouldn't be any good at that. Emily believed something different, and so I said I would think about it over the weekend. I did think about it, and I thought, don't regret what you didn't do. I agreed to give it a go, and to my great surprise, I loved it. I love knocking on doors and finding out ways I could help people. Of course, I didn't win in 2019, although I did get the 6th biggest first preference swing to Labor in the country. Afterwards, I thought, what do I want to do now? In the time I had lived in my community, I had seen it changing. Our residential streets were becoming less peaceful, historic houses and buildings were being demolished, and large trees were being destroyed. My community, both unique and extraordinary, is 20 different suburbs that all have their own wonderful character. From our quiet tree-lined streets and grand houses to our smaller streets and workers' cottages, from our parks and gardens to our bars and restaurants, our mighty redlegs, and so much more, its offerings vary from street to street and suburb to suburb, but it is an equally wonderful place to live all across it. I knew that if we didn't protect the attributes which tied us together, we were and remain at risk of being separated and overrun, and losing much of what we value about this place we so love. This community that had given me so much needed someone to step up and act before it was too late. I knew about advocacy, and I knew that person could be me. I knew that the issues I cared about most were issues dealt with at state level, so I let my party know I wanted to be the candidate for Dunstan at the 2022 state election. Once I was pre-selected, I set about knocking on as many doors as I could to hear from people locally where they lived. Our community is not homogenous, but the issues that drove me to want to represent it are almost universal. We want sensible urban infill. We want our historic buildings protected from demolition. We want peace to return to our residential streets, and we want to protect and expand our local tree canopy. Of course, there are many other important issues, and to my community of Dunstan I say, be assured, I have heard you loud and clear. I share your desires, and I will advocate fiercely for them too. Being a good member of our community is something I think about every day. My life has taught me that communities prosper when people's lives are meaningful, when people have opportunity, and when they have the means for connection. Building great communities means understanding how people thrive in their work and their life, and what their hopes are for the future. That is what drives me. To the voters of Dunstan, thank you. This community has welcomed us unreservedly. Getting to know you over the years has been one of my life's greatest privileges. I cannot thank you enough for opening your doors and your hearts to me. You have been kind and generous. It has been an incredible honour being your community advocate and fighting for the issues that matter to you. And now I hope to prove to you that I'm the right person to do that job for many years to come. To the Honourable Emily Burke, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You have changed me as a person. You extended friendship from the moment you met me. You taught me that to have faith in oneself is to have faith in the people around you that believe in you, in the people around you that believe in you. And I'll never forget the faith you placed in me, and I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for Emily Burke. Thank you also to our party secretary, Eamon Burke. You have always been prepared to listen, to engage with me, and I've always felt supported by you. To our Premier, Peter Malinauskas, thank you for always being so warm and supportive of me. You lead by example with your incredible work ethic, sincerity and humbleness. It is an honour to represent the people of Dunstan under your leadership. I'm here because I believe in the values and the traditions of the great Australian Labor Party. Yeah. And I know the best way to serve my community and my state is as part of this strong, united Malinauskas Labor government. To my mate Lucy Hood, thank you for your friendship over the years, your support and kindness to me. We've shared injury, heartache and celebration together, and all of it with lots of laughs at the absurdities of life. To Marielle Smith, Nympha Farrell, Victoria Brown, Sonia Romeo, Jane Stinson, Olivia Savas, Katrine Hilliard and Susan Close, and all my other Labor women friends in the caucus and in the party. There are so many of you. Thank you. I am truly grateful for the support, guidance and advice you have given me. We are a sisterhood, and I know I can turn to you all when the going gets tough. The entire Labor caucus has shown me incredible support and made me feel a valued part of the team from the very beginning. Thank you to Don Farrell and Reggie Martin for your long-term support and encouragement. And to Tom Coutts-Tonis, Nick Champion, Stephen Mulligan and Chris Picton for always having my back. And thank you to Leo Odenwalder and Justin Hanson for joining me on the doors. Thank you to Josh Peake and the incredible SDA. We all see how well you represent the interests of South Australian workers, often some of the lowest paid and the most essential. I am so proud to be an SDA member. Thank you also to the TWU and the AWU. To my dear friend, the long-serving member for Norwood, Greg Crafter. Thank you for your enduring friendship, mentorship and support. Your knowledge, wisdom and guidance have always been something I hold dearly, and it is a great comfort to me to know I can continue to seek your counsel as the new member for Dunstan. To my excellent sub-branch, I will always be grateful for your incredible hard work and the support you have shown me and your stoicism through years of opposition. To the Hagars, thank you for your wisdom, for your years of support and your belief in me. To anyone else I haven't had the chance to thank personally, I will always be grateful for the help you've given me for the help you've given me. In an election, and most particularly in a by-election, every single bit of support counts. To my husband, James, you are my best friend and the love of my life. You give me strength. You are the one support I couldn't live without. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the love, support and sacrifice you have made to enable me the privilege of standing for and now sitting in this place. To my beautiful children, you are each of you the apple of my eye. You all have such character, strength and determination and intellect. Remy, you are the social justice warrior. You are settled and happy, and I'm so proud of your achievements. Noah, your goodness and kindness and love of people mean you are loved by all who meet you, and your joy and success in life are testament to that. Sai, my Sai-Pai. We have been through so much together. You've always known how to make me laugh. And I'm so proud of your considered thought, determination, and strength of character. I know you will make people happy wherever you go. And Phoebes, my baby girl, you have made me a better person. I'm astounded by you on a daily basis. With your brain the size of an iceberg and your love of animals and nature, happiness is just watching you grow in intellect, in kindness and thoughtfulness. To my mother, Lucinda, it was the realisation that you were the tower of strength in our family that taught me that no one and nothing should cause you to lose your grace. And to my sister, Jasmine, thank you for a lifetime of friendship, ideas shared and always being there at the end of the phone line. My husband and I have been so lucky to call our community home for the last 11 years. Our children have grown up here, we've started our businesses here, I volunteer here, and I have become part of so many communities. I want to thank the beautiful multicultural communities within the Dunstan community, represented by their churches and community organisations who have been so warm and welcoming of me. To Dominic Rapucci and everyone at the Alta Villa Opina Sports and Social Club. To Lena and at the San Giorgio La Malara Community Centre. And to Vicky Antonio, George Moraes, Father John, and the Greek Orthodox parish and community of Profiti Elia. Thank you for your support and friendship. I'm not going anywhere. To Pauline and Marg and everyone else at Meals on Wheels in Norwood, thank you. To my friend Bill and the Norwood Panem St Peter's community bus, thank you. From the moment I sat under the red umbrellas of Chibo, I felt like I had come home. I found the place I had always longed for. It is this community that gave me the sense of belonging and place that I have sought my entire life. To the community of Dunstan, your generosity of spirit has filled me with energy. I am humbled by the trust you have placed in me to help solve long-standing issues and concerns. I have a deep sense of responsibility to do all that I can for you, for all of us. I will work hard. I will fight for our community. I will be available to listen to your concerns and act on them. In me, you have a warrior for the causes that matter most to us. This community has allowed me to be my best self, and I've never been better. Thank you.
Yeah.